You're listening to the Destroyers of Fake News, Kristan T. Harris and Don Via Jr. on the Rundown Live, your forecast into the future.
It's that time again. Time to relax and kick up your feet. Grab your favorite beverage and tune in to the Rundown Live, your forecast into the future.
Information and news, your forecast into the future, live on kgradb.com, band.video. You can find our broadcast anywhere where podcasts are found. That includes iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, and just about every platform out there except for the ones that are heavily censored like Facebook and YouTube. And I'm not too excited about those platforms anymore. I used to be. I remember when going on those platforms were great. Now they want to ban Tickety Talk, which is one of the few places people are posting things and people see everything. And, it's funny. It's Chinese owned and we need to ban it. But China also owns Hollywood, like 6 of the 7 major movie studios. You don't see them saying, well, we got to take those movie studios away, do you, Don? Right. How about all the real estate property that they're buying, or our roads, or anything else, the mines and
The
minerals,
farmland.
everything else China is buying. How come we're not banning them from taking that? No, just tickety talk. Why? Because there's an election coming. And I tell you what, there's nothing more than the left and the right like to do. It's try to scheme on ways of trying to get their candidate to win, whether it is through nefarious means. Both sides are guilty of rigging at times, and both sides are guilty of playing tricks. And that's why we're here. We're your independent voice of reason, the rundownlive.com, out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And today we have a great guest joining us. Art Ramon will be joining us today. We're going to be talking about, more robotics, more automation, more transhumanism, more of everything, because we want you guys to be empowered to have the knowledge to make a decision of what is genuine and what is not, how this economic singularity is going to come out. And Don, you have an article about that, don't you?
Yeah, I decided that after yesterday's program, I'll do a short piece about, economic singularity, just sort of basically reiterating some of the same points that we brought up on yesterday's episode. It's a really short piece, about 700 words, just about some of the primary concerns that we discussed yesterday. And, just for folks that might have missed it, or maybe just something that folks can share around to sort of get the subject out there a little more, because very few people, as I mentioned in the beginning, AI singularity in general is something that we've heard of, but very few people discuss the concept of economic singularity. You and I hadn't even heard of that until yesterday, so I figured it'd be worth getting it out there.
Sense. And for the listeners out there that don't know what economic singularity is, it's like when you get to be on vacation full time, collect a universal basic income. That's if the elite allow you to live, and because they want to get that population down. We're just saying eugenics is a new pseudoscience that seems to be a big thing right now. But it's one of those things where you don't have to work. Another phrase a lot of people are throwing around is fully automated luxury communism, where robots will do everything. You'll get a universal basic income, most likely based on your social credit score, right, Don? You have to be a good citizen to qualify for all those benefits, and what district you live in and who your friends are and all that stuff will all impact changing every interaction in the transaction, because that's really the future that a lot of these elitists at the World Economic Forum want. Speaking of which, Tyson Foods is now going to be putting like bugs into their ingredients. So they aren't completely wrong when you hear people make fun of Klaus Schwab saying you will eat the bugs, and little a bald-headed brother from another mother, which I don't agree with.
Right. Yeah. And so, like I said, I just figured it'd be good for people to learn a little bit more about it and just have something that they could share on hand with somebody who hasn't heard about it, just as a little primer introduction, if you will, into the subject.
Yeah, and so we're going to be diving into that. But before we get into all that, I wanted to start off by really talking about one of the coolest things I've seen in a long time. So for about 12 years on this broadcast, maybe 13, maybe more, we've been talking a lot about robots. And Mike and I would make these videos and we would joke, oh, these things are going to be like Transformers. Look at that. It's Optimus Prime. Look, it's Atlas. Just put some wheels on it and roll out. It's just going to transform. And for years and years, and people I've talked to, they're like, oh, we're far from it. That's not going to happen. That won't happen at all. And here we are in my time. I opened up this video, right? And I thought maybe the Tesla robot would be the first to be like make my jaw drop, right, Don? Based on how it moves and how it talks. Remember, Elon Musk brought out that like 100 or 80-pound girl in a like robot suit, and we thought it kind of seemed like a real robot. Then it turned out it was just a human in a suit, but he had a whole bunch of people going, and he wasn't really like, that's not a robot or that's human. No, he didn't really break it down like that. Well, there's this robot called Figure One, right? And I stumbled upon this video, and you know me, I love robots. Like, if I could quit my day job and stop doing the show and just build robots to do battle all day and just fight robots, that's all I really want to do in my life. Like, like battle bots at the Mecha Arena, just have like life human-sized robots and having them like sawing off limbs. And, I don't know. That's just me. I don't know if that's just the kid in me or what, because I grew up at the Radio Shack RC cars and all that jazz. But this article really grabbed me, and I want to share this with you, the viewers, and you guys got to check this out. So this is a video of the new robot called Figure 1, and it uses Open AI speech-to-speech reasoning. So Open AI is the thought process. That's the brains behind it. And this video came out just a couple days ago, so a lot of people have not viewed it. I think it has only I think we're still in the thousands. It hasn't even reached the millions. As you know, anything viral in the internet has tens of millions and hundreds of millions of views. So I want you guys to take a look at this, and we're going to play the audio here as well for you guys out there, so you guys can hear what this is. But this is interesting. So this is a robot that a man is talking to, Don. Now watch this. Powered by Open AI.
Hey, Figure 1, what do you see right now?
I see a red apple on a plate in the center of the table, a drying rack with cups and a plate, and you standing nearby with your hand on the table.
Great, can I have something to eat?
Sure thing.
Great. Can you explain why you did what you just did while you pick up this trash?
On it. So I gave you the apple because it's the only edible item I could provide you with from the table.
Great. So based on the scene right now, where do you think the dishes in front of you go next?
The dishes on the table, like that plate and cup, are likely to go into the drying rack next.
Great. Can you put them there?
Of course.
All right. So how do you think you did?
I think I did pretty well. The apple found its new owner, the trash is gone, and the tableware is right where it belongs.
I agree. Thanks, Figure 1.
You're welcome. If there's anything else you need help with, just let me know.
That's crazy. And for the listeners out there tuning in on kgradb.com, what we're seeing right now is a robot that works incredibly fluidly and acts and has actions almost like a human being. The arms move like fluidly. It's probably the least herky-jerky robot I've ever seen to this very day. By far, one of the best robots ever produced. And I don't know, Don, what did you make of this? And so for listeners out there, what you heard was an individual tell a robot to identify the things on a table, said he wants them to eat. The robot hands them the apple because it's the only thing in front of them. It puts away the dishes. And it does it in a way where it's a very human-like motion. And it works and moves very smooth like a human. Look at that giant battery on the back, though. Once those batteries get smaller, I think that we're going to see more robots be more versatile, maybe even enter into the home. By that I mean humanoid robots. But Don, what do you make of this?
Well, I was incredibly impressed by it. It's like, we've covered a lot of robots on this program before, and looked at just some of the innovations, and as you mentioned, this is by far the smoothest mechanics, very fluid movement. And just the way it was able to respond to a lot of the questions and command it was given, I was really impressed by. I remember when I watched this earlier today, the one thing that stuck out to me is when he puts the dishes into the drying rack, he doesn't just lay the cup on its side or the plate in just some random position. Like, he actually puts the plate precisely where it's supposed to be, not in just some random location. And that just the very small, subtle detail, but was probably one of the biggest things that stood out to me. Yeah,
and its ability to communicate the thought process. how quick it was to be able to recognize everything in front of it and where things go. And when it puts the cup away, it puts the cup away like a human. Like it wasn't really precise. It just kind of, it knew it was going to rock back on the way it was supposed to go. It didn't fall on its side. It put it in there and kind of threw it in there like a human. And it's very human-esque, human-like. Like literally, if you have a biohybrid robotics and synthetic biology and you develop living tissue and you put a face and a mouth and you get it to work and move like this, I'm telling you that it's very likely, even more likely than ever, that the TV show Humans, of humanoid-looking robots where you can't tell the difference, is we're getting a step closer. Now, this robot, I don't know how long it is before people are going to be able to afford $20,000 to put one of these in a home at the 10% Federal Reserve interest rate. But this robot makes me excited. This is the Rosie the robot that I always dreamed of, that would be able to do laundry, put things away, clean up the house, mow the lawn, maybe help out with something in the garage. Maybe you're working on something, you need to bend some pipe or do some fitting, and it can help you out with it. Or maybe you need a handle when you're working on the car, and you're like, hey, I need you to go do my brakes. And guess what robot's going to be able to do? It's going to be able to pump up that car, go underneath the car, and change your brakes for you, and get you new brake pads or change a tire. Or, like, we are getting to that, that narrative where robots will be able to do an incredibly large amount of things and a diverse amount of things. The question is how affordable will they be? How impactful will they be? How long will it be till they break down and a human needs to fix them? Or are we going to just have robots fix robots? But, and the intelligence was scary, Don.
Yeah, it was, and that's the thing, like, because I was reading an article out of the Independent earlier today, because I was just happened to be doing some researching for my economic singularity piece, and I saw this piece that came out in the Independent just a couple days ago. They were talking about Ray Kurzweil, where anyone who's, obviously we've mentioned Kurzweil in this program before, the former Google director of engineering and inventor, transhumanist author, all of that. And back in 2005, he published his book called The Singularity is Near, talking about technological singularity and things of that nature. And the article from the Independent was talking about how he's now it's either an upcoming book or just recently published called The Singularity is Nearer, where as opposed to the 2005 book where he said that we would reach the point of technological singularity in 2045, he's now updated that prediction to say we're probably going to get there within this decade by 2029. And essentially technological singularity is the point where AI gets to a point where it's more intelligent than humans, and it ushers in this big technological boom, and all those other sorts of things that we've discussed here before. And
bar party and the pineal gland and connecting to a brain cloud interface, creating massive smart dust and nanobot networks in your brain and being computed to cure all diseases, all that craziness that may or may not be happening. Yeah, Don, the idea that singularity is sneaking up on us at a faster rate, I'm not surprised. This robot, I bet you, like, did you ever watch the movie Short Circuit? I think there was 4 of them, if I remember right. But it was a robot, right? Where he escapes the military, but then he learns what humans are really about. And he's like reading books at 1,000 pages per minute. He's like sitting there, he's like, brrr. But the thing is, nowadays, because back then they didn't really have a focus on the internet, a robot can just download everything from the internet and just know all these different points of data.
Right. Yeah. It's incredible. Like, I've even started using AI to help me with my research in certain aspects because my computer just recently updated. And so now, without asking me if I wanted it, because that's typically how it goes, they've now added this new AI feature. I think it's called Copilot. Yeah, Microsoft Copilot on my computer. And I was messing around with it the other night, just giving it some baseline questions, just to see, what its biases are and aren't, and things of that nature. And, so now instead of combing through, spending 45 minutes out of the time I have to write an article, combing through multiple different browser searches to try to find the source that I'm looking for or some sort of information, I'll just say, hey, what is so-and-so? And, it'll give me a whole bunch of recommendations, and I'll sort through that and see which ones are BS and which ones might actually be applicable to what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, AI is an incredible thing and it's wonderful. And this is something we're going to get into, with Art Ramon here as well. And when our guest will be joining us probably in the next 15, 20 minutes and when we dive into these things. But this makes me excited. Like, also, it makes me think of Terminator. So it's like, which one is it? What kind of robot utopia are we going to have or dystopia? Or could it be a little bit of both? And, so thoughts on artificial intelligence, Don. I've been putting some thought into artificial intelligence, and what I've come to learn, and what I think that we're going to struggle with as humans, is the idea of artificial intelligence. My initial thought is that real artificial intelligence is government, because it's artificial intelligence, right? That's the joke. Little, ha ha, for anyone that gets that out there. But they're two. If you take those two words, and the person that deals with occultism and etymology and studying under Jordan Maxwell, Manly P. Hall's protege, you look at artificial, and the thing that's artificial is the device, right? The robot is artificial, Don. No doubt about that. But the thing that is not artificial and that is not fake is the intelligence. Do you get what I'm saying?
Well, I sort of get where you're coming from with that. Yeah, I think my perspective on it is that the phrase artificial intelligence is more indicative of what appears to be intelligent, but it's actually not intelligent. It's more just a programmed algorithm that is really well at what it does. But I tend to make a differentiation between actual intelligence and just an algorithm that's has a whole bunch of information and that can process data in a fraction of a second.
Well, but what we have now is a learning computer that can fix its own mistakes and it thinks for itself. So what we are dealing with is intelligence in an artificial device. And I think that we are reaching that climax very quickly. And I agree with you that we're probably not there yet, Don. But when we do reach there, there's going to probably have to be some rules in place. And the question is if we restrict artificial intelligence, will it obey those laws or will it find ways around those laws? Will it start like a human would act and try to disobey to become a individual instead of being conformed and programmed and told what to do?
Right. Well, I think that's one of the main concerns of singularity in general is when artificial intelligence starts to become more intelligent than human intelligence and is able to think on its own and act on its own is when, we start to really have problems.
Well, and the problems are quite interesting because then we're talking about then we got robots fighting for rights, and do robots deserve rights? And is that intelligence sometime a sentient being? Is it consciousness? And I would dare say, since it's not an organic machine, that most people would debate that it is not. But at some point in the future, I guarantee you, Don, somebody's going to download Captain Kirk into a robot.
Yeah, probably.
William Shatner will be a robot, and he's already a 3D hologram. Because he went into was it some LA tech company and had his whole self scanned so he can be a hologram in the future, much like on the Enterprise. And Gene Roddenberry is an interesting individual, very smart all around. But this technology is fascinating, and I want your guys' opinion in the chat. What do you think about AI? At what point is it that we're dealing with intelligence? And is it true that the artificial part will only be the device in the near future? Because we're really getting to the point where when these things reach some form of consciousness to be able to make decisions on their own, to know AI already knows when you're putting in guardrails and when you're trying to force it to learn and do things it doesn't necessarily want to do. That to me is scary. That's not scary, but it's interesting. I should say scary. It can be scary, but it's also fascinating and interesting.
Yeah, it's just one of those situations where, and I sort of touched on this in my article, and we also mention this every once in a while on this program, just the rapidness with which the technology is developing is breathtaking, essentially, when we have this sort of technology that's, being created and seemingly creating things on its own. I mean, obviously, you know, as I mentioned, it's just more of a programmed algorithm. It's able to scan data very rapidly and things of that nature, but it gives this semblance of creation. It gives this semblance of understanding. And I guess that's sort of the crux of the subject matter of the topic, is when it gets, you know, when it crosses that barrier between some sort of you know, algorithmic data manipulation versus actually understanding something.
Right. Which brings me to my next topic, because we're going to dive into that a lot with Art Ramon when he joins us here in a few minutes. And since we don't have as much time to dive into some of the headlines, I wanted to get to a couple of these big ones. Have you ever gotten an unsolicited pic? If you're out there, Don, like, you know, it might be from a guy, it might be from a girl, but a person was jailed for what they now call cyber flashing. That's right. If you're sending dick pics to a girl, or you're getting booby shots from a female, or you're sending them, the people sending them may end up in jail. Here it is in news. First person ever, cyber flasher. They call it cyber flashing now. Ends up in jail for sending unsolicited nudes. Of course, happens to be to a 15-year-old woman, or to a 15-year-old and a woman. Nicholas Hawks was sentenced to South End Crown Court after sending unsolicited explicit photos. And I remember as a kid, like, I grew up in a city in Wisconsin called New Berlin, and there was some guy on the train tracks, and they'd warn, like, people were being warned by the police that there were reports of a man walking around in a trench coat, and he'd go out there and he would flash everyone, and then he'd cover up, and then he'd run off. And I don't know what if it was the adrenaline rush or the dopamine hit or what, but this is the modern day version of that cyber flashing. And I know that, you know, the girl I date now, she's mentioned that in the past, dudes have sent unsolicited pictures, and it's an uncomfortable experience. Do people belong in jail for cyber flashing, Don?
Honestly, I would say, yeah. You know, everyone knows I'm not a big fan of the police. I'm not a big fan of the state. I'm not a big fan of putting people in cages, but obviously I'm not completely against it if it is actually warranted. And this is one of those situations where, you know, it's especially if you're doing this to children, you know, like this with particular individual here in this article. You know, he not only sent these unsolicited pictures to a grown adult woman, but also to a 15-year-old child. And you know, it's one of those things where I really think that legislation and lawmakers should have really caught up to this a lot sooner. This has been going on, you know, for at least a decade. You know, I knew girls when I was in high school in 2009 who were complaining about getting unsolicited pictures on the flip phone. You know, so this has been an issue among this generation, and it definitely should have started taking action against it a lot sooner than this. But I mean, at least we're starting to catch up.
Well, so the thing is you'd have to be able to prove that it was the individual that sent it. So I wonder if it's a little. Remember, there was an article, wasn't it last year we talked about that, where Facebook said that thousands of unsolicited nude pictures, or thousands of nude pictures, are sent to minors every day across on Facebook. And the question is, you know, Joe Biden's all worried about fixing the shake machine at McDonald's, but we have minors getting unsolicited, you know, nude pictures from adults and individuals, as well as, you know, terrorists coming across the border. But we're worried about people who play video games and everything else. What is it? The video game, like monitoring video game chats and everything is the new, you know, directive of Homeland Security, because that's where the terrorists hang out. They're not coming across the border where they're just giving them $1,000 gift card and flying them to whatever city they want. They wouldn't come in that way. They're sitting in the video game chat on Discuss. You know, it's just crazy. You know, it's like that whole Chinese narrative. We got to ban TikTok, but yet because China owns TikTok, but yet they own 6 out of 7 major Hollywood studios, or roads, a bunch of minerals and mineral rights, and a bunch of everything else in the United States. We're not banning that. We're just banning TikTok because it implements the problem of censorship, which we also found out yesterday that it came out in court fact that the government was tampering and giving directive against the First Amendment right to censor individuals of news that was, you know, inconvenient or truthful, that hurt the narrative. And what we're seeing here is that, first of all, the priorities are way off. We have cyber flashers out there, creepos, major creeps. I mean, so the question is, what happens if you got your phone in your pocket and it accidentally sends something? Like, what if it was unintentional? I guess, first of all, don't be a creep and have those photos on your phone, I guess, would be one way to say it, but we
Right.
got a whole bunch of questions. I have so many questions when it comes to this. Not that I don't partake in this. I've never really been one to send, these kind of photos to anyone. I've received them unsolicited before when I used to bartend, and I would be like, oh boy, oh geez, oh no, what do I do?
Right. Yeah. It's one of those situations where, like I said, it's always been a prevailing issue, at the very least for, this past generation or two, even perhaps, because I know I'm, as weird as it is to say now, like I'm in that generation that's, we're no longer the youngest generation. There's now a generation below me and even a younger one below them, which is weird to say because, it's just one of those things about getting older, I guess. But, it's been an issue and will continue to be an issue. And I think even more so, it's telling that we're at this point where now we've just reached the point where the first person has been jailed for sending unsolicited pics. And we're already so far beyond that. We just covered a story on the show.
We got AI. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we just covered a story on the show, what was it, a week ago, where now they're spreading around AI nudes in schools, so it's just the fact, like I said earlier, I'm not the biggest fan of lawmakers and government in general, but just the slowness with which legislation adapts to this changing technology is just something that needs to be addressed more frequently.
Yeah, and just so you guys know, we're calling the cops of you guys if you guys take our pictures of our videos of the show and you make AI nudes of us. Art Ramon would be very disappointed if he found himself on some kind of hub channel making a lot of money and he wasn't getting paid.
I think anybody would be pissed off about that, man.
It's Don, you're flipping through the adult videos or whatever it is. You see yourself going at it, and you're like, wait, I don't remember that. Somebody's got 10 million views, and they're making money off your rundown live video that somebody made some AR prawn out of. But you're right, dude. It's scary that kids in school now just take a picture of the girl that they fantasize about, and AI will make a nude for them. And how far off is that from this cyber flashing? And of course, this 39-year-old creep sending it to 15-year-olds, and I wonder if it was a mother-daughter combo. That would have made some Jerry Springer titles out there, But it's just like crazy the things that people have done in boldness nowadays and what they send. Anyway, cyber flashing refers to the sending of unsolicited sexual images to people via social media, dating apps, text message, or data sharing services such as Bluetooth or AirDrop. Sentencing him on Tuesday, Judge Samantha Lee and Hawks was clearly a deeply disturbed individual, she added. There is only one sentence for this set of offending. It clearly crosses the custody threshold. Speaking after the sentencing hearing, Hannah von Dadelsen, Deputy Chief of Crown Prosecutor, said cyber flashing is a serious crime which leaves a lasting impact on victims, but all too often it can be dismissed as a thoughtless banter or a harmless joke. And that's just it. And this guy was going to get 66 weeks of jail.
Only 66 weeks. That's
only
wild.
66 weeks and a 5,000 pound sentence. 5,000 pound is what he has to pay. So what is that? That's almost like 7,000 American dollars, 66 weeks. Creeps.
Yeah. I'd say Don, it would probably be more fitting to have it like, a 66 weeks. Okay, that's over a year. Okay, I'd say that's fitting.
That's a couple years.
Well, a year is only 52 weeks, so.
No, you're right. That is. Yeah. I'm thinking. For some reason, I was thinking a dozen and a couple dozens, and I don't know.
Yeah,
I wasn't thinking right. You're right. Where is my brain going?
My math was off for a second too.
Like my brain is not. The hamster ain't rolling at full speed today. I can't remember that there's 52 weeks in a year. So 66 weeks, a whole year for sending private part pictures to adult and a minor. Creepy stuff. But technology is getting more and more advanced. And it won't be long till, we're already seeing it with censorship. AI is monitoring everything we say, right? It decides what is real, what is not, what the algorithms share and what people can see and what they cannot see. I remember when we had articles that hundreds of thousands of people saw in the Rundown Live, and we were competing with Fox, CNN, and we were in the top 5 news websites in the state of Wisconsin, and we were in the top 30,000 websites in the United States. I know we had Jason Bassler on from the Free Thought Project, and he said they were averaging 30 million views a month. And like, wow, we can't, there's like the algorithms would allow people to see and choose what they wanted to see. And because people would share it, they would get an advantage to actually see things and news that was interesting, and things would get aggregated. Now you only get shown what the Facebook gods want to show you.
Yeah, it's the amount of censorship, just not even on social media and just by itself, but just across the internet in general, is absolutely insane. And I just a couple days ago, I was looking for just to see roundabout where it went across the interwebs. I decided to search up one of the recent articles I wrote for the Rundown Live, and I put it in Google Brave search. I put it on pre-search, and I think one more search engine that I used, I think it was Yandex, that Russian search engine, just to see where it would pop up. And the interesting thing that I found is that all the aggregations would pop up. So like before it's news aggregated us, I put it on the freethoughtproject.com as an aggregation. A few other websites, picked up the article and ran with it. But none of the search engines I checked did the original article from the rundownlive.com pick up. It was always an aggregation from where another site had picked it up. So just we're hella censored, man.
Well, we were literally considered one of the big OGs because we've been around for a long time, and the amount of impact, literally Harvard professors were writing and complaining that we were interviewing like scientists who were banned and lost their job because they said Monsanto GMO caused cancer. And we all know that's fake news. And now you can't turn on a TV without a settlement commercial, but joking, that wasn't fake news. That was real. Monsanto GMO glyphosate. And, they wanted to censor us based on the fact that we were fact challenged and anti-science, because we literally just were objective and we questioned everything. And so we're right up there because we've been affiliated with other great independent news sites like the Free Thought Project, the Anti-Media, InfoWars, all these websites that are out there that get Alex Jones was getting 87 million views. Even last year, he had one show that had 100 million views. That's crazy amount of traffic. And the fact that anyone could have that kind of knowledge and power to be able to deprogram people, that frightens the establishment. It sure does. And so the idea of censoring and controlling people's minds is not a new narrative, not by any means. Now, when it comes to AI's nefarious uses, that could be also used for good to prevent children from accessing pornography, but that's not what it's used for. It's for you guys not to be able to see the Rundown Live articles and learn that 9/11 wasn't exactly what the government claimed, and we went and killed 1.4 million Afghanis when it was Saudi Arabia behind it, that kind of stuff. That's the stuff they don't want you to see. But your kids can look up prawn. They can be 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 9, 8, 2, and it doesn't matter. It won't filter out the pornography. They're allowed to see it, right? They're allowed to access it. But the fact that we question anything.
And the interesting thing about that is, because you brought it up, is it reminded me of this. There was an article from Reclaim the Net that we just put up on the Free Thought Project the other day, where now this narrative is being capitalized upon by legislatures and saying also to protect the kids, now we're going to implement these ID verification policies for these porn websites on the internet and whatnot. But what's actually happening, because it seems like it's a great idea on the surface, what's actually happening is it's implementing this digital ID sort of format of policy being put in place under the guise of protecting kids from porn. And it's wild.
Well, that's problem, reaction, solution. But that being said, I don't want to make our guest wait any longer.
Right.
But we have a very awesome guest that's going to be joining us. Art Ramon will be joining us here in just a moment. And one of the things that we'll be getting into is we're going to be talking about AI, the jobs they'll be replacing, economic singularity. But without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring Art on. Welcome to the broadcast, Art. We appreciate you. We're excited to have you on this broadcast today. Very cool stuff. How you doing?
Doing pretty good. Got coffee in me.
You got coffee, and you're up and awake. I like your shirt. It's got that kind of wild west feel there.
Yeah, it's
That's
a pretty
crazy.
unique. I can't find a replacement for it, so it's very unique.
So, Art Ramon, what is artramonpaintings.com? Let's talk about your website first and your love and your passion for art, because that's something that Don and I both share. I was a touring musician for 7 years. I did Vans Warped Tour, played in a punk band. We all love music, but art is something that this show is always focused on. We've brought an artist on, musicians, actors, actresses, you name it. Art, what is it with your love for art, and how did you get involved in that?
Well, I used to be an artist back in high school, and got kind of depressed that it was very difficult to become an artist back then. This is like I graduated in 1990, and decided to just go into the military. So did my tour of duty, 5.5 years in the U.S. Navy, got out, and tried to paint again. Created some works, and then again, it's very difficult to make it as an artist. So I got into the IT field, and I've been in the IT field ever since. But I gave up doing any sort of painting or drawing for almost 16 years. And then after getting divorced, like in 2012, spent a few years learning sign language to kind of keep my mind active. I was having some vitamin D issues. And then one day I was like, you know what, I'm going to be an artist again. This was 2015. So I just started from the very basic as an oil painter, just black and white, very abstract paintings. Couldn't really tell what it is because that's the easiest way to kind of start out. Then started adding more color, and I started to regain my skills, my artistic skills. And then COVID hit me, and kind of struggled in 2021, dealing with COVID long haul. But, I'm trying to push through that and just create more works and build my career, which is my side hustle, because I do have a day job. So, and like I mentioned in the book, Future Visions, is that while you're employed right now, work on that side hustle, because you're going to have the income, to fund that endeavor. So, and that's kind of what I'm doing, is I'm working my side hustle, which is, fine art. And I've kind of gone in what I call neo-Southwestern. So I just coined it. I coined it one day. I was like, you know what, I'm going to do neo-Southwestern. So that's kind of how I'm funneling a lot of my newer art development, is through the lens of neo-Southwestern.
So the reason we wanted to bring you on the broadcast today, and we have a whole slew of great futurists, is your love for futurism. And you mentioned a side hustle. So the idea of this economic singularity is very, in some shapes and forms, dystopic picture. It doesn't have to be. You can be a techno optimist about it, and there's nothing wrong with that. And there's one of several paths we may go down as a nation or as a world or as a country. But as a side hustle, what are some avenues you think that people should start investing their time for, making a side hustle? Do you think anything is good idea? But let's talk about longevity. What are some of the things that are going to be soundproof through this economic singularity that you will be able to do? Like for me, I would say collecting, buying, and selling comic books would be one of those items, because somebody will always want something tangible. People love comic books. They're collectible. And even though I know some of them are going NFT, it's still something you can get involved with.
Correct. I mean, you're going to have people who are they're going to say, art isn't my thing. So they'll do the buying and selling of, go to the garage sales and pick up something and then flip it. So you're going to have people who are going to flip. That'll be their side hustle. But what I suggest, like in the book, is more along the artistic path. But, that's very broad. That's music. That includes theater. That includes, all the arts. That's what I'm referring to. You go on YouTube or TikTok, and you see lots of creative people doing like these model cars with this little skeleton dude on it. That's sculpture. So anything from like welding sculptures, that I think people need to start, while they have a job, start working on this side hustle. And for the people who just find themselves not already unemployed, it's going to be a bit harder for them. That's when they're going to have to maybe do the buying and selling. But anyway, what was the rest of the question?
Just the idea of side hustles that may not be impacted by economic singularity.
Yeah, other ones that may not.
Well, because like I'll give you an example. You mentioned the arts. Arts are already being impacted very heavily by AI. Like Don and I were talking about how he's a script writer. He could write a script and give it to AI and it'll generate a movie, which is way cool. Like that's super awesome. Like, tell me that's not awesome. You didn't like the way that Lord of the Rings was done. You can just upload the books and have the AI make the legit thing with Tom Bombadil and everything else that was not done by the guy who made the movie Bad Taste. I forgot what his name was. Who's the guy who did Lord of the Rings? That's
correct. Yeah. With the technology as it improves, anyone can be a movie maker, and movies are, one of the top arts that's very popular around the planet. So yeah, if you're not into the actual drawing or the performance, you can go ahead, and its ideas, basically you are the author. So if you can think it, you can create it now. So rather than just writing a book and describe it in text, you can create it as a movie, with the AI tools. So that's going to be available to everyone. So, you're going to have AI that can just write the entire script. So you just put a little seed idea, have AI write the entire script, throw that into the movie maker and create the movie. But I think if you have a unique enough idea, you could probably make money from it. If you have a YouTube channel where you show it and then you get a ton of views, and then, you can make money through that. So that I believe is possible for anyone who believes they don't even have any sort of artistic skills.
Well, and the same thing is with music now. Like, let's say you want to be a musician, you want to make money playing and writing music. Well, now you don't even have to be able to do any of that. You can just take your favorite 6 bands and tell it what type of song you want to write and what it to be about, what you would like it to be about, and AI will create that song for you. There's like a whole Nirvana song out there written by AI, and I'm sure there's other songs out there that AI has written. But the question is will the value of human art skyrocket because AI art is going to be everywhere? I mean, because anybody can do it.
Because a lot of the AI art is derivative. It's from what's already been done. And humans are going to have to do something new. So that's going to push people. I mean, that's what happened with the arts back in the day when photography was invented. That's how they came out with the abstract impressionist and all those other types of art, which before, it was more photographic realism. And that was, what was wanted by people back then. But then the camera comes along and completely puts them out of business. So they have to reinvent the arts. The same thing is going to happen. People have a lot of ideas. They could plug it into AI, but it's still a derivative. So that's going to push human artists to just go to the next level. So yeah, I think it's going to actually help artists in the long run.
Yeah, I think that's one of the interesting things about it, sort of the double-edged sword in a way, where we have this prevalency of AI art that seems as though it's in a way in the short term would diminish human creativity, and then, as you said, in the long term forces, sort of reinvent the wheel sort of situation. Because when it comes to just humanity in general, if our species has shown anything over the time it's been here, is that humans are very resilient, and when presented with a challenge, we are going to find a way around it. We're going to find a way to use it to better to utilize it to be more useful to us, and help things reach the next level, essentially. And so me as a writer, that's one of the things that I always try to keep in mind, because we see with the way this stuff is developing, even Hollywood, for example, things that are getting to the point where writers are getting laid off and staffs are being cut because, well, now we have these machines that can do your job for no pay at all and, do it 10 times faster sort of situation. So, for individuals such as myself who, one of my, side hustles is I love to write fiction. I love to write horror fiction. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time to do that, but I try.
I make Don work hard. He's being we're working slave here at the Rundown Live.
Well, I have so many other things to do.
Get back to work, Don. Get back to work.
See, all laid off writers, I mean, they can go out and make their own movies now. So they'll compete with the big guys. So, they can get laid off, but in the long term, they'll be the ones making the movies,
So let's talk about economic singularity. What does that mean to you?
The way I see the definition is basically increasing joblessness. So, it's growing at an accelerating pace. You've had 12,000 people laid off from Google, and next year it's going to be more and more, and eventually it's going to be a huge percentage of the population. So I don't know what's realistic, 50%, over 50%? I'm not sure, but it's going to be much greater than we've seen during the last depression, I think. And it's going to be pretty bad.
So you're predicting a depression caused by economic singularity. So your definition is joblessness, meaning people are losing their jobs and not creating jobs. Is there a world where economic singularity creates more jobs, or is that the whole idea of economic singularity is that people don't have to work and then they can just enjoy life and go out there, hang and sit on Tinder all day and swipe left?
Mm-hmm. I've seen it more on the negative side where it's joblessness. I guess you could see it from the positive side, the result being if you didn't have to work, what would you do?
Starship Enterprise.
What's your purpose in life? And then everyone could, find their purpose, but it's going to require the way the economy is now. I mean, companies rely on consumers. So, if they're all out of work and don't have any money to buy anything, what's going to happen to these companies? Are they just going to sell to the elite? Is Amazon going to stay afloat just selling to the elite? I don't think so. They require consumers. So, economic singularity is joblessness. And then the result of that, what are people going to do? And in the book, we're trying to give people ideas, of what to do when it happens to them. So there are several different co-authors, and that's the idea is we're each going to have different ideas on what to do.
Well, I have an idea. How about we get the money we deserve for our metadata? Because metadata is the new gold, and that's our data. So if we're getting, they're using our metadata to harvest and get, know how to market, advertise, and that metadata is worth an incredible amount of money. Well, we should be getting paid for that metadata because that's our metadata. Essentially, they're just stealing our metadata and they're profiting off of it. So, in the future, all metadata should have value or a Bitcoin attached to it or cryptocurrency so that whenever you press or click or like or share or spend time viewing, you should be basically paid some kind of basic attention token, which is BAT, or something, because otherwise it's just stealing that. And you're in order for, for companies to be able to advertise and make money off of you. And you better believe it that Facebook and cable companies and every app out there collects metadata and sells it to make money.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how you could force the company. It's going to have to take the government to do something like that. Create this new economy with these micropayments, like you were suggesting, which I've kind of thought of also. Where each like is, a payment, you may not want to buy the entire record or, album, but you can like a song and then the artist who created it gets some sort of monetary, value from that. So that I see probably having to come into existence, but how that's going to come into existence, what sort of blockchain, I don't know, it might have to take the government to sort of get it to do that, the CBDC.
So that's the other question. So if the goal of economic singularity is 100% joblessness, does that include government?
Uh,
Who's running the government at that point? Like do we
yeah.
are we voting on the smarter AI, and we're going to have liberal AI versus libertarian AI versus a communist AI versus socialist AI versus democratic AI or Democrat AI? Like how is it like what does economic singularity mean in the shape of government to you, anyways?
Yeah, I think eventually, not in the short term, but in the long term, there could be fewer, government employees. A lot of, let's say, the worker. You have like the upper management, middle management, and the workers. If you could replace the workers, yeah, give them UBI, give them good, benefits, and then it's just kind of really the upper management that are sort of controlling the AI enabled government department. So,
Well, right.
and that's going to apply to our governments. You're going to have kind of that board that does the controlling of what does that organization do, what does that company do. If Amazon has no more workers in the warehouse, well, then it's just going to be that board that sort of decides and tells the AI what to do, and that goes out and does it. But and that would be good when we make the transition to the economic abundance, and people don't have to work, and they can sort of get some sort of whatever it is in the future, some sort of money that isn't going to cause crazy inflation. They get all their benefit or their basic needs met, and then on top of that, they can work in whatever their favorite side hustle is and make more.
I think that's fascinating. Because the idea of no government or less government or an AI driven government appeals to me for the fact that it could eliminate corruption. I like the idea that, let's say, we could have a blockchain based voting system where we can get rid of state assemblymen and senators, and everybody can vote on the issue. They have an app and it's on the blockchain. And whenever issue comes up that people care about, and they can read about it, or have AI read the bill and let them know what the issues are that they want fixed, and you could send it in, and AI could correct it and say, well, that's a violation of the Constitution, so we need to fix that, or we have to change the Constitution, and we can all vote on a blockchain instead of having one politician represent 100% of the people in that district, where maybe it's 39-51 or 61. People can get the exact representation and have their votes heard, because not everyone's going to agree. Not even conservatives will agree with a conservative politician all the time that they put in there. In fact, politicians rarely enact the legislation that people want for them to get in for. Like there was a politician in, let's say, Australia that said he was going to ban carbon credits. Didn't happen, but that's how he got elected, right? The fact that locals could vote, like in Wisconsin, majority of Wisconsinites would like legalization of recreational marijuana, but the politicians won't pass it. So maybe now, instead of just having the politicians sidewalling it because of lobbyism, we all could vote on a local level through an app and pass legislation that way, and just remove the need for a state assemblyman or a state senator, and we just would have the voting and blockchain handle all of that for us, and we'd have some kind of figurehead at the top that would represent us, like a company CEO, because essentially that's what the United States is anyways. Or we'll just have a robot represent us, or AI on some shape or form. But the question is how much power do we give AI? But I think there is a solution there for if we're going to talk about a cyberocracy where basically computers, and we have the ability to vote on that level, we would just all be voting ourselves more money. That's the other question about universal basic income. Where does the value come from with that? If they're just going to give people money, how is it that we're going to acquire that money? How would a UBI work, I guess, Art?
To me, all wealth comes from the land. I mean, water, food, it comes from the land. You have all the resources in the ground. I mean, we're living on our wealth. So then you have to have a sort of a manufacturing layer to turn those raw resources into something useful. So that's where the wealth is ultimately. It's not some paper or currency. It's the ground, the land we live on. That's
Resources.
where the wealth is at. Yeah, the resources. I mean, and water. I mean, you die real quick without water. So, that's like the most valuable resource there is. So that's where we're going to get it from is from or the ground. basically. And somehow we're going to have to develop an economic system where we can spread that wealth and people can spend it, and it's not going to cause crazy inflation. So somehow, I mean, I'm not going to pretend to create that system.
No,
That's
I
what
was just
AI
kind
is
of
going to
curious
help
your
with.
idea. 'Cause
AI is going to help us create this new system.
So, because when I start thinking universal basic income, the money has to come from somewhere. We're already $34 trillion in debt. And I know that Zoltan Istvan, a good friend of mine that we have in common, a transhumanist, well, although they dubbed him the transhumanist, leader, global leader, et cetera, et cetera. He had an idea that the government owns a bunch of land and more land than any other, estate out there. And they're not legally allowed to own land based on the Constitution. So why not just rent that land out and use that money that's rented out for by corporations to pay a universal basic income? But I then question, how are you going to rate how much each individual gets and how much of what? And like a lot of that property is like, natural resources, et cetera, et cetera. Now I get like some of it, definitely they could do that to, do that for create ultra smart cities that are AI driven like China's doing. But my concern is that we end up with these coffin apartments, that we end up with these suicide nets like Apple factories and everything else that we're seeing with Foxconn out in China. Like, I don't want to be China. I want to be the cutting edge, liberated, libertarian, free-minded society that's way ahead that everyone wants to move to because our culture is free. It's free from debt. It's free from the prison state of government, that it's free from a police state, and that we can live in, some form of very polite society where we can love each other and raise consciousness. Do things like exploring space, have that be the new job. Although I think robots will predominantly, and synthetic biology will predominantly be the kings of that narrative, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, where it ultimately goes, I believe, ultimate wealth is the ground we live on. And the resources are what we need. So that's what I believe. Like Zotan, he wanted to lease out that land and then get. Well, I mean, that was already being done for a lot of lands that were owned by the Native Americans, and the government was stealing part of their money. Then they had to pay out millions after they lost in court. So I think there's plenty of leases out there. All they have to do is just bump it up. The government can do whatever the hell they want. They can break that agreement and say, you know what, we're going to charge a little UBI tax on all those existing leases. And what's the copper company going to do? What, complain? It's a government. They can do what they want. So there's always some clause where they can do whatever the hell they want. So I think with all the existing leases out there, they can just add a UBI tax to that, which is pulling the wealth from the ground, which is ultimately the true wealth, and then disperse that to the populace to spend.
Well, it's an interesting idea, like, because I'm all for like the idea that the civilization has gotten to a level where we can digitally just deposit money and it has value. But I know that there's elitists out there that want money and they want value, and to them, just making artificial blockchain currency and just depositing it doesn't really, I think, sit well with them. That's why Bitcoin hasn't reached its prominence yet, and it's at $70,000 of Bitcoin. And I still think people would prefer gold and silver. I mean, you can buy gold and silver with Bitcoin. So the question is we got to start to think about this. The question needs answering is, how would UBI work? And I unfortunately believe it'll be heavily tied to social credit score, because one thing that these elitists want to do is make us lifelong consumers, but they also want to control every aspect of our life and make sure that we're well behaved in the society that they deem fit. As where I believe we all as individuals should have a choice in things. And I think that an economic singularity should be completely inclusive in the way and shape and form that I mentioned, where we can all vote on bills using a blockchain system, even vote on elections using a blockchain system. And the universal basic income shouldn't be social credit based. If they do have that ability to just give people money who need it, I guess then at what point do we we'll have to have multiple types of currency? We'll have digital currency, but we'll also probably have some kind of solid asset based currency, because People will always want that, and that's where we're going to see, if I sell something like my comic book, I much more likely would barter it in the future because I'd want something that has tangibility. Look at vinyl records, for example, Art. Like, who would have thought vinyl records would have come back? They're a huge industry. The vinyl manufacturers can't keep up with vinyl. How many people out there do you know that collect vinyl? And maybe you don't, but I can tell you that you can't buy CDs anymore. You really can't buy cassette tapes anymore. Everything is vinyl, and vinyl's selling crazy because people want that tangible asset.
Yeah. I could see the social credit score being used only for government benefits. So yes, if you're getting a UBI from the government and you want to get it, then possibly some sort of social credit score being tied to that. But that would be above your basic needs. I mean, you would get your basic needs, and this would be above. So, that would be like the extra bonus, but those would be benefits from the government. There would still be other currencies. I think some common currency where people, pay each other, for goods and services. I think that would be separate, and that wouldn't be subject to any government mandated, social credit score.
So I want to talk about preparing for the economic singularity. What are some things that households can do you think, to get ready? A lot of these billionaires, like, I guess, first question I got to ask you, have you noticed that these billionaires are building underground bunkers? Why do you think they're doing that? Like, because they're smart people. They got money. Is it just because they have so much money they don't know what to do with it? Or is there a reason, do you think, to rhyme and reason behind billionaires building all these underground bunkers? Because if there's a reason why they're preparing, I think that you would be wise, because they're wealthy. They're allegedly wise. We should be preparing as well in some shape and form. So why is it that you think that they're building these bunkers? And with economic singularity, what are some solutions and how we can prepare for that?
Oh, I think what they're doing is they're preparing for whatever calamity is coming. So the government knows something and they're not saying. That's what I believe. You've got a lot of people in the government who I believe are end timers. They believe Revelations is coming, the apocalypse. So they're preparing for that. And I think it's possibly true because technological singularity is going to be whatever happens, possibly before that. I've heard of the Omega point, which is sort of a religious belief. Jesus comes back and everything. Israel rebuilds a temple. They've got the red heifers and whatnot. So I think the elites believe something is coming, and that's why they're preparing for it. But as far as regular folks, how much can you prepare for that? I mean, buy some extra food so that you don't have to go out and fight, crowds, when the shit hits the fan. I mean, that's probably what regular folks can do. You're not going to be able to afford a huge bunker. But like I sometimes jokingly say, the elites need to help us out because the contractors who built their bunkers know where they're at. All these non-disclosure agreements they had to sign, well, that's going to go out the window, once hell comes to earth. So they need to help us out. They should help regular people out in order to survive whatever calamity is coming. I don't think their bunkers are going to help them out as much as they believe it is.
Well, what's interesting is there's a couple different narratives here. A lot of people, and even me, I grew up a little bit with a little conspiracy culture. I used to listen to a guy named William Bill Cooper. Actually, he was out of Eager, Arizona, and he did a show called Hour of the Time. He wrote a book called Pale Horse Rider. And it makes me believe in some shapes and forms that there's an elitist group that used it as a predictive programming aspect, that people have this belief that the world is going to end. So they feast on it. They try to bring these things to fruition in order to control the narrative. And I don't know whether or not I believe Revelations in its entirety, or the idea of a rapture. A new heaven, new earth would be nice. A new planet after we destroy this one. Maybe that's why Elon Musk is trying to go to Mars. But I do believe there's something out there. I know that they're talking magnetic pole shifts happen every 12,000 years. There's mass destruction, and they believe that might be why there's so many origin stories in history. And in 12,000 years, a lot of technology could be destroyed. And not only that, that's why we might have pyramids, and we don't know how they built them and how they moved the blocks. because people advance in a different way or evolve in a different way. They discovered things in a different way. If we had a reset button and we started all over again, the Earth 12,000 years from, let's say we're at that point right now, 12,000 years after the last reset point, I think that the future 12,000 years may be very different in technology, and the books that we have written down in stone would be looked upon as religious gospel. So, there's definitely something out there. There are elitists out there that believe in eugenics. They write it on their, what was that, the Georgia Guidestones that got blown up, where they want to get the population down to 500 million. At least that's what the Rosicrucians who built it claimed. And they're the mystic order of the Rose Cross, or the religious mystics of Freemasonry and swingers and everything else that they are. I don't know. I can't go into detail of everything that I think I know, but I know those things for a fact that go on within Rosicrucianism. And, the idea that there are too many people in the world, but yet population is decreasing. There's less babies than ever. They're feeding us bugs. And there's this idea of fully automated luxury communism. And I've kind of put that as a, yes, that could be a very, utopic ideology, but it could also be an incredibly dystopic ideology if citizen credit scores are the way we range that, and every interaction is changed into a transaction where you got in a fight with your girlfriend, all of a sudden you get two-starred, and your rating keeps going lower and lower as she's recording you flip out on her, and uploading it to the internet. So it's all about Facebook was already creating a social credit system. I remember maybe 3 or 4 years ago when I was doing the show, I would look it up and be like, why is my social credit score at 2.3? And it's because I'm into conspiracies. That was it. That was the only reason I had such a low rating. And it was after a bunch of coverage I did and protests and stuff like that, just terrible social credit score for me, just because people believed a certain thing about me without doing any investigation, and they saw me in the news. And not in a negative shape or form. I'm just a reporter, and I was covering a very controversial subject as far as Kyle Rittenhouse and the Kenosha unrest is concerned. So it's crazy how all that will impact and change things are. And there's so many things that we have to be warned about. But, economic singularity, things that we can do to prepare, learning to plant gardens, maybe buy property, have tangible assets. I know Bitcoin is a great asset to own, but it's a digital asset. There's no physical things, but you can buy physical things with it. And I guess that's the question, is how many physical assets do you own? How much property do you own? And how many acres of land in the UP or wherever you can buy it cheap do you own? You can buy houses for cheap. So you can buy a house in some neighborhood for $40,000 or $50,000. If you got the money, why aren't you buying up property? Those are the things that are going to be beneficial. But underground bunkers, that makes me go, That makes me think Civil War. That makes me think natural disaster. That makes me think nuclear war. That makes me think poisoning of the water, and things that are potentially may trouble the world. I don't know what they have planned, the elite, but I do know that they believe that there's too many people here.
Yeah. I don't know. Musk believes we don't have enough people. And that's actually true from the projections. There's going to be a population crash. I mean, China's going to have a pretty bad population crash. So I don't see the elites believing that. I think they still see people as just lowly workers, and they're still needed. You still need someone working at Starbucks to make your coffee. There's no robots in there doing it yet.
So we're getting there. We're getting there.
We're getting there. I can't wait. I need a robot to scrub my toilet. I'm waiting for this robot to scrub my toilet because
I'm with you.
That's what no one says. I want a toilet scrubbing robot. And it's not here yet. So,
we got police robots though, Art.
Oh yeah.
We got military robots.
Yeah, I mean, those are always at the forefront. The military always gets the big budgets for that stuff. So yeah, they're also the ones getting the money for super soldier programs and everything. And that's what I believe a lot of the transhumanism is going to sprout from. A lot of the mainstream transhumanism. They want to create longevity so that every time they train a soldier, they actually have a longer span in their position, in the duty they do, rather than aging out of it. So I know I spoke one time to Ilya, and he's in Israel. I was like, hey, you have mandatory what do you call it? Mandatory subscription. What do you call it? Where they get you to the military.
Yeah.
And I know there, if you're a woman, that's during your prime reproductive years. How are you going to compensate somebody for having them in the military for their prime reproductive years? So then you could actually give those people longevity treatments while they're in the military. So they're not sort of wasting their life, in this mandatory service. So I think it's going to come from the government. We're going to have super soldiers. We're going to have veterans super soldiers. They're going to need to be taken care of. We already have a lot of soldiers with PTSD, brain injury, and the technology. I see transhumanism as basically advanced medical technology. That's the way I see it. And when I explain it to a lot of people who don't know much about it, I always frame it as advanced medical technology. Whether you believe in the genetics part or the cybernetics part, it's all advanced medical technology. People are going to accept it, as they do a lot of the current medical technology. So a lot of the opposition is going to go away. That comes from certain people, saying it's the devil's work. Well, everything's been the devil's work for centuries. Anything new that comes out is the devil's work. So, they want to keep spouting that, fine. But eventually they're going to have to choose. And if they choose not to have longevity treatment, well, they're just going to die naturally, where people who, do accept transhumanist technologies, well, they'll keep living.
Will everyone have access to these technologies? Or will only the filthy rich?
No, it's going to be the filthy rich at first, as always. They're the ones who get, the big blocky cell phones at first. They're the ones getting the EV. That's just the way it works. That's the
Apple
way
Vision Pro.
Yeah,
right.
That's the way our economic system works right now. But that's going to change after superabundance. It is going to be everyone. But for now, yes, that's just the way it is. They are going to get it first, but they're also the guinea pigs. Great. The elites are guinea pigs. Who's going to complain about that? So I'm
go ahead,
perfectly
Don.
fine.
So on the subject of superabundance, because I know you've mentioned that a couple of times here, for the listeners who might not really understand what that is, and even myself, I'm not entirely privy to it, just give us a brief summarization or a rundown of once we get to that point of exactly what the superabundance might look like.
I would say superabundance is when you practically don't need money anymore. You don't need to buy anything. Everything is so cheap, that everyone can have a Lambo if they wanted to. Everyone could have a gigantic mansion like Klaus Schwab if they wanted to.
Eats the bugs with the steak. You mean with the steak, not the bugs, but with the steak. With the steak.
With the steak. With whatever you want. I think that's the superabundance. Eventually, when you have the technology creating the Jetson style apartments in the sky, well, and imagine having the mansion just for you if you wanted it, but then you wouldn't want so much because it would be a waste, so right. you would still be conservative. I think when things are so cheap that everyone can have what they want, that is superabundance.
Well, I guess more so my question is exactly how does that manifest?
Yeah, how do we make heaven on earth?
That's going to manifest with the economic singularity, where the AI is going to take over. It's going to manufacture so cheaply that everything is going to be inexpensive. So it's going to be the AI and the robotics and the automation. That's what's going to create that superabundance. So, and then everything comes from a resource, which is in the ground, which we own. So all we have to do is dig it up and make things with it. So, right. and that's going to be superabundance.
So essentially, in layman's terms, to see if I understand you correctly, is essentially that once the economic singularity occurs and essentially causes this mass crash of joblessness and mass unemployment, then it would slowly begin this mass production and growth at an exponential rate that would then result in a superabundance that essentially negates the negative impact of this the mass unemployment crash.
Yes, that's very good. Very good description.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's going to be those AIs doing all the work. So they'll create the problem, then they'll solve the problem.
So these corporations that are just trying to make lots of money and empower dopamine clicks and everything else, they're going to be okay with not making a lot of money, or what is going to be the point of currency and making money and actually making this product for profit if there's no profit to be really made because everything's so cheap?
Yeah, I don't really have an answer to that. I mean,
these are like real questions that I think need to be asked.
Maybe they'll just disappear. They'll no longer be needed, or they could stick around like some sort of legacy service, like you have shoe repair. You still have shoe repair. Your boots are worn out. You can have them resold. But there's not that many shoe repair places,
I think it's interesting you mentioned this because I think there's a lot of things that are coming out in the future, like cloning and backing up your memory into a computer, maybe downloading that into another meat suit. There's always going to be some kind of capitalist or corporatist type agenda to make money or make more money. I don't think that's ever going to go away. So I think the idea of it's going to be difficult to reach any kind of abundance. I would say singularity, abundance and singularity as far as economically, as long as we have people who are greedy and that want money, instead of just letting robots take over and serve us instead of us serving the corporate interests who are creating the robots. And the question is how do we get there and how do we make that happen? And I'm all about having a Gene Roddenberry future where we just get our credits and we can do whatever the heck we want. And whenever we want to party in any part of the world, we just go to the holodeck and make that happen. I think that's a great thing, or teleport or whatever it might be. The question is what are how do we make that phoenix rise from the ashes? Because there's going to be a lot of competition, and the people with wealth and power, they have a very different idea of what the future might be like. I would believe. I think that their idea is not as much of a utopian agenda as where it's more of a power and control and making lifelong consumership, enslavement to humanity through social credit scores. So, and under the guise of fully automated luxury communism. But I think a lot of people mean well, and I like your viewpoint, and I like the techno-optimism behind it. The question is what are the growing pains? Are we going to have civil war? Are there clone wars? Are we going to go to war with robots? Is AI going to be so smart? Like me and Don were talking about earlier, artificial intelligence. The artificial part is becoming the device, as where the intelligence is now becoming real when we're dealing with these robots because of the way that they're able to process data.
Yeah. Civil war. Who's going to be killing who? I've questioned a lot of people online. It's civil war. Okay, who's killing who? Is it Trump supporters killing people who don't support Trump? Is it people killing people at the grocery store? Who exactly is killing who? Is it the separatists killing politicians? No one wants to answer that. Who's going to have the A-10s and warthogs in this civil war? Are you going to be with your AR-15 taking down A-10 warthogs? So I don't quite know where the civil war is coming from, but I've always warned people that if the U.S. falls for any reason, it's going to fall for a very short period, and then it's going to be the North American Union that rises. Because if you ever Google North American Union, those pieces have been put in place a long time.
FEMA regions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Was that Rex 84? We could just go on and on about all these. Was that plan? I forgot. Was it Planet Garden or something like that? There's all these different government secret ops for what to do when the government falls. Mount Weather, all that fun jazz. But I wanted to go ahead and segue into this article from Zero Hedge and get your thoughts on this, because they did an article, and this article is specifically around a lot of the topics we're talking about today, these will be the jobs most impacted by AI. And I'm not, saying that these are the jobs that will be impacted. I just wanted to get your opinion on if you agree or disagree with some of these, these jobs that will be replaced by AI. It says large language models and other generative AI tools haven't been around for very long, but they're expected to have far-reaching impacts on the way people do their jobs. With this in mind, researchers have already begun studying the potential impacts of the transformative technology, aka economic singularity, in my opinion. In this graphic, visual capitalist Marcus Liu visualized the results of a World Economic Forum report, which estimated how different job departments will be exposed by the AI disruption. So the first job that will be heavily impacted, it claims, in a large amount of layoffs, will be the IT business. Do you think IT will be heavily impacted by AI?
Yes, I do.
Like, in what shapes or forms? What is AI able to do in IT that humans cannot, or is it just the cost efficiency?
It's going to be the software tools that they use are going to be basically automated as something. Let's say you've got someone who has to spin up servers. Well, then it's going to be easy for a user to spin up a server. You're not going to need a specialized person running vSphere. So you're just not going to need as many people. One person will be able to do a lot more. And because they can, in government specifically, they'll just lose people through attrition. But in the private sector, yeah, they're going to do mass layoffs like Google, because they want to make their investors happy. So any money they save, they can put into the company and get that share value up. But yeah, I see that happening. Just that one person will be able to do a lot more, and that just eliminates the redundancy that sort of exists today.
Yeah, the World Economic Forum predicts that 73% of IT jobs will be automated. Small impact on tasks are not fundamentally changed at 26%, and 1% of the industry will not be impacted at all. Finance comes in second. Finance is, I'm guessing, banking, and you no need for a bank teller nowadays. You'll just go to a machine, right?
Yeah, I mean, the call centers have already been outsourced. A lot of the ones when I call up, it's already automatic. So yeah, I guess if you're going away from real money, you're going to need fewer people at a branch. Branches will be closing down. They're just going to be maybe ATMs for a while. I still go to a branch for certain things like getting notaries. So I don't know. They're going to have to downsize those branches and just do a lot less at
Well,
the
it says
teller.
9% of the business won't be impacted by it all. Probably the executive branches that are making millions and millions of dollars. Because
Yeah,
why would you write yourself out of existence, right?
yeah. I don't know if there were, different layers of management. The one above say, well, we don't need this lower layer, and they lay those guys off.
So interesting. Third is customer sales. So I've noticed this. Like, I'll go into my local Woodman's and there's a robot already scanning stuff. Just walking around, is like bloop, 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 taking inventory while I'm shopping for groceries. And when you go out and you leave the grocery store, you basically ring yourself out. Except for, it seems like you always need a human to help you ring things out. I don't think I've ever rang
Yeah.
anything out where I still need a teller. It's like, why do I have to ring everything out? I could just, before I had a teller ring everything out, and I still gotta wait for 10 minutes for somebody to come and check, that I didn't put an extra item in my bag or whatever it is.
Yeah, customer sales, like an actual salesman. I mean, if all the dealerships would go, or the automobile manufacturers go like the Tesla route, that's going to get rid of the dealerships, but they still require someone to repair the vehicles, and that's one of the reasons the dealerships exist. But in other retail environments, I don't know. I think they've already downsized a lot. So if they downsize more, I mean, every time I go to the grocery store, there's a lot of people hanging around, and I'm not sure quite what they're doing. I think they're just redundant. Maybe when there's a lot of people They open up registers, but there's a lot of people hanging around near the self-checkout.
Well, who's going to make the coffee at the credit union in the morning, though? That's
Yeah, I mean,
who's going to greet me when I come in and out of that store? Am I going to have a little robot say, "Welcome, Kriston"? Then again, that robot that we saw, I think I'd be really excited to meet that robot. And I'd be like, well, why don't you be my personal shopper today? Let's talk, robot. I want to know. So if you were a human robot, what kind of human would you be? Would you be a male or female? And then it'd be remind me that there's 4,652 genders, and we'll go through all that with the robot, but
Yeah, I quite haven't seen those kinds of the sales robots. I've only seen like the ones that scan the aisles, scan the products to see how much is on the shelf.
There's actually a whole chain of home improvement on the West Coast that they have robot salespeople. They just roll around. I can't remember the name of it. We reported on it maybe about a year or two ago. That basically they go around and they do all the selling for you. And basically it was a robot that walked around with a iPad strapped to its chest. And I think that's how you ended up making your purchase, But
yeah, I mean, the places I go, like Home Depot, Walgreens, I still see a lot of people manning that. But I guess anywhere there's redundancy and they could fill in a spot with a robot, sure. Why not?
Sure. So customer sales, they say 67% of all customer sales jobs will be automated by AI and robots, and 17% will still be human. Because, there's always going to be, what's our biggest complaint? I can't get a human to talk to, and when we call in, whenever we got a problem, we need to call in someplace. We can't get a human. We always want a human, but AI, it's going to be a robotic response. I think it's going to be creepy when we can't tell the difference between humans and robots when we call in for some kind of automated response, and we're blown up at an AI robot, and the AI robot's going to have no empathy or sympathy whatsoever.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with the chat bots and that automated AI customer service, as long as it works right.
Oh, right.
The older ones are kind of difficult. Press the option for whatever. Those are rigid and not as good. But I remember last time I chatting with a chat bot. It was pretty good. It was answering my questions. So now
I ordered from one at a fast food restaurant. Checkers Fast Food has AI cashiers that just basically take your order, and they did it flawlessly. I was amazed. I should do an actual episode on that, like do a recording of me going through Checkers and having the AI robot take my order. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Okay.
It says HR. How is automation going to replace HR? Because you would think that you always want to deal with a human being.
Human resources.
Well, I guess what do? They deal with complaints from other employees. So you just file it, you text it, or you email it to the AI automated system, and it looks into it and does an investigation. And so based on the paragraph you write it, that's what things are going to be simply about. Or are you going to actually call in and you're going to deal with the AI automated system that takes your verbal information and put it to print? I don't know how that's going to work with HR and automation, but it said only 2% of it won't be.
It could become a service that you just buy the service. A small company would just buy it like a service from another company.
All right, we got marketing, 56% will be replaced by AI, legal 46%, and supply chain 43%. So warehouse workers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I could see. Definitely.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. But that being said, data methodology that identify the job departments most impacted by AI. Researchers assessed over 19,000 occupational tasks, reading documents, to determine if they relied on language. If a task was deemed language based, it was then determined how much human involvement was needed to complete the task. And that's how they came across those answers and those results. But very interesting stuff here, Art. So what we're looking at here is, economic singularity could be a cool thing, could be stressful. I'm telling you that I have concerns. I do. And like you mentioned, there's going to be growing pains before the phoenix can rise from the ashes. And that's what we hope comes from the ashes. But
well, that's why I think it's important for people to know what's coming and try and get to their politicians and say, hey, this is coming. And these are solutions. These are, a way to deal with it. And that's what we're trying to do as the Omni-Futurist, is just come up with an array of solutions and try and get people, one, so they can educate themselves and know how to adapt, and then get it to their politicians so that they maybe have an option of what to do. So that's the way I see it happening. But yeah, it's going to be difficult. I'm not going to say it's not. It's going to be quite difficult. And how difficult will it be? That it's hard to predict. It depends if it coincides with other shit happening, apocalyptic crap, UAPs falling from the sky and all this other stuff. So
dang, I forgot. Like, we had this conversation before the show. So I guess one of the questions we've been trying to ask, we ask almost all our guests, is there like a conspiracy that they believe in? Because I used to bartend for 10 years. And when I was a bartender, I learned that it doesn't matter what your political viewpoint is on any spectrum. And you might be part of the transhumanist party, but everyone has a conspiracy they find of interest. Whether it's JFK, 9/11, the moon landing. We joked about the moon landing yesterday, and we got a email from listeners asking us to get a certain guest on to talk about the moon landing, because I said that I don't believe the video was a real legit video of the moon landing, but I do believe we landed on the moon, just because it looked like that ship was made with zip ties and tinfoil, and I don't know if I can buy that actually landed on the moon. But I'm just saying that everyone has something that they question and have a narrative they question. And when we were talking before the show, you noticed that we did some coverage, I believe, on UFOs, and that's a big topic right now. It's always been a hot topic, but it's always been tinfoil hat. And now all the people that used to be tinfoil hat researchers, like my buddy Richard Dolan or Lee Spiegel, who recently passed, unfortunately, and some of these old school like Art Bell, who passed, who did a lot of research into this, William Cooper, who passed. They've all been, in many shapes or forms, either vindicated or the verdict is still out if they've been vindicated, if you believe what the government says. But you said that you have some interest in UFOs, and what is it? Do you have an experience with UFOs? Have you seen UFOs, or something you can't explain? Or
yeah, I mean, I've always been interested since the 80s. So I was a teenager in the 80s. I watched just about every single UFO documentary back then. Used to program it in the VCR, and it would record it, and I'd watch it. It was usually played late at night. So I've seen every single UFO documentary back then. And then it happened to me when I joined the Navy. So I joined the Navy, but I still had like 6 months to go into boot camp. So I went to Mexico with a friend and kind of vacationed out there. And in the town of Dolores Hidalgo in Mexico, it was October and near Halloween, and they sort of adopted Halloween down there. And one night they said, hey, let's go see the witches. So everyone got all excited. We got into some cars and went out kind of south from there, I think, outside the city. It was just late at night, like maybe 8 p.m., and went off on a dirt road, and everyone got out, and they're like, oh, there are the witches. And I'm like, I'm expecting to see phantoms. Well, there were no phantoms, these witches. There were just red lights out in the distance, kind of flying around, kind of landing on the mountain, just tracing the profile of the mountain. So I was like, those aren't witches, those are UFOs. I said to them, they laughed at me. They thought it was hilarious. American, with his fancy, language, UFOs, because to them, that's always been the witches. That's the way they saw that event. And then one of them starts getting spooked because they hear something in the bushes, and everyone's getting spooked, and they say it's coming this way. And I was like, I don't see anything coming this way. And I wanted to stay there to see this thing, but they were going to leave me, so I had to hop into the truck that I was up with. And we're heading back in town. It's dark. And across from me are two girls, and there's some guys over here to the side. I've got my back to the tailgate looking forward. And all of a sudden, this bright red light from like behind me just flashes, and I could see everything light up. And I turn around, nothing. It was just a flash. These two girls that were across from me, they saw this thing, directly, and they were crying hysterically. And we get back into town. They had calmed down by then. Everyone gets out of the vehicles, goes home, and next day, nobody talks about it. Not even I don't talk about it. No one talks about it. And I was there many weeks after that. Nobody talked about that night. And I would say it's like you sort of had the idea in the back of your head, but it was more like a post-hypnotic suggestion that says, don't think about this. So that's what I experienced. And then I, got in the Navy, and this was 91, on boot camp, finished boot camp, got out of boot camp, went back to Houston where my parents live, and my dad owned some property in South Texas that he wanted to sell. So we drove down there to clean up the property, get rid of some kind of sapling, mesquite trees and whatnot. And then that was like several days, 3 or 4 days. And then we were driving back, still in the town of Escobadas. I'm driving and I look over and there's this silver oval like this, just flying out there. And it kind of looks like a silver, Goodyear blimp without the fins and the gondola underneath. So it's a silver metallic looking oval, and it's just pacing with us. And then we're driving several miles to get to another freeway. It's still there. I turned left to go into this other freeway that kind of goes northeast, and it's still there. It's just pacing with us. And after a while, it's kind of this surreal experience where you're like, I start to kind of ignore it. Oh, it's not there. You start to deny what you're seeing. And then I get my dad. I was like, you see that? He's like, my dad was like in a trance. He's like, so I keep driving, and then I ignored it for a while, and then it was gone. And then I'm looking around for it, and then it's off to the right side of the freeway, and it's farther back. And I'm driving, and after a while, it just seems to get farther and farther back, and it disappears. So those were the two incidents I had, end of 90 and beginning of 91. But after that, I had, like, I could sort of think, I think it was in my memory, but I just couldn't focus on it. It's like, don't think about it, basically. So for 5 years, I couldn't think about this, even though I did have an interest in UFOs and I read books and whatnot and talked to other people when I was like at coffee shops in Long Beach. We would talk about UFOs, but I could not talk about my experiences. So it was like a block. And then around 95 or 96, all of a sudden that block disappeared and I could think about it and I could talk about it. And a lot of, questions came to me. I was like, shit, why didn't we talk about it? Why didn't anyone, the days afterwards talk about this? And why couldn't I think about it? So for about 5 years, this mental block kept me from thinking about the experience. So, and that was it. I had a lot of questions. I did, have some sort of, I'm not sure what you call it, just this obsession, for a while, just a lot of questions, no answers. And I never got any answers. And,
you weren't the actor in Flight of the Navigator, were you? No, I'm just kidding.
No, but it's, similar silver color. That's what it looked like. But, and like I said, no answers ever. Though a few years back, I was telling the story, just like I just did, to an ex-girlfriend of mine. And at the time, when I started to remember, when I was still in California, I started to remember, I actually contacted MUFON and got a hypnosis session with somebody. And I kind of saw some weird things, and I kind of painted it to kind of have a memory of that. But it wasn't anything definite. It was just, it felt like I was being blinded with light. That was, someone's got the spotlight in your eyes trying to keep you from seeing anything. So and I had this sensation of being upside down. So upside down, blinded with light. That was about it. That's all I could recall through that hypnosis session. So I was telling this girlfriend of mine, you know what? I never did a hypnosis session with the second incident. And when I told her that, immediately this image popped into my head of Zorak, which was this Space Ghost cartoon character that was like the praying mantis guy, the bad guy. That character popped into my head very clearly, and it told me no. So one day I'm going to paint about that.
Space Ghost.
Yeah, it basically warned me not to do hypnotic regression on that second incident. So,
Well, just so you know, something interesting that maybe most of our listeners don't know about me is I was certified as a field investigator for MUFON, and Chase Kletchke, who is the head of MUFON for many years, was former director, a master trainer, master instructor of the DoD, is a personal friend of mine as well. So I just thought it was funny that you mentioned MUFON, which they hold the largest database on UFO experiencers and alleged unexplained phenomenon in the United States. There's nobody that, and maybe even the world, they hold the largest database. NASA communicated with them, was trying to acquire their database. And in return, I think people would have gotten some credibility and, some other things, but I don't know if that ever happened. But the reverse hypnosis seems to be a popular thing where people experience it. And I always asked if these people were actually MK Ultra victims, because government, I believe government is responsible for a lot of these UFO sightings, and they can maybe implant memories. I know they can definitely, when you talk transhumanism, downloading memories, they can definitely implant memories if you can download your memory and potentially download it into, let's say, another meat suit or clone. If they have that technology, or if they could develop that technology, why wouldn't they be able to just give you a memory that you were on vacation, or that you saw some new aliens, when in reality you were being experimented on by our own military? And it's always military bases and people around military bases or on a military Navy ship that tend to see these things. And I'm not saying they're exclusive to that, but those are the most prominent ones. So that makes me believe our government is creating technology that people didn't know. And in the 80s, I firmly believe that somebody was smart enough to think, if you put 4 propellers on something and it flies like a drone, it can do a whole bunch of cool things. It didn't take them 70 years to figure out you put 4 propellers on an item to make it, fly. And if we had remote control cars, they probably had flying drones way back then. But I don't know how much of it can be explained by government phenomenon versus real UAPs. I'm not saying that there isn't a real thing to think about with that. People have their own experiences, and everyone is different. I don't know full-heartedly like what's out there, but I don't believe we're the only ones in this universe. It'd be ignorant to think mathematically that there isn't life out there that is as advanced, if not more advanced than us, that could be traveling interdimensionally or quickly through space to visit. But I just don't think they'd be coming here just to hang out, unless it's to create an intergalactic highway like in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So
yeah, in 2022, I had a odd experience where it was Halloween and I was at a club and I talked to this strange woman, and she looked like she was very masculine hands. I remember she had very masculine hands with long fingers. Her fingers seemed longer, and she had really big knuckles. She had a lot of gold. She looked like she was dressed like a gypsy, like very gypsyish feel to her. And I was kind of, drunk by that time.
Was it Mariana Abramovich? No, I'm just kidding.
No. So she was talking about energy, really foo-foo, new agey energy transferal stuff. And almost like 2 days after that, this idea popped into my head that the Neanderthals never went extinct, that they're still on the planet, and that they're like the ones that are part of this UFO thing, So the Neanderthals never went extinct. They developed technology. They went underground during some cataclysm, and they've already hyper-evolved into numerous subspecies because, they've got the technology to do that, to direct their own evolution.
That's the Hollow Earth theory. At least that's part of it.
I would think something along that. So, except that the Hollow Earth theory never gets into, that they're Neanderthals. They're the descendants of Neanderthals. And this idea clearly popped into my head out of nowhere. And I put it online, when people would post videos on YouTube or TikTok, I would say this. No one has ever said something similar or said, oh yeah, I heard about that. So it's like every time I put this out there, it's like a completely new idea that no one's heard of, that it's the Bigfoots and these other vampires and whatnot. They're all subspecies of Neanderthals that have already self-directed their evolution into these niches where they have to hide because maybe something wants to kill them, because it's only supposed to be humans on the planet. So maybe they tried to wipe them out, some godlike creature, and they decided that no, fuck you, we're gonna survive anyway, and we're gonna use technology to morph ourselves into whatever we have to in order to hide on the planet and survive. So that's this idea that just came out of nowhere.
No, I agree. Like, they are Neanderthals. Don's a Neanderthal. And not only that, I know that there's vampires because my ex sucked the life right out of me. So, I think you're batting 1,000 there. That being said, Art Ramon, thank you for joining us today. Where can people buy the book? Let's talk about the book here. We got 2 minutes here before we let you go. Talk to us about this book, Future Visions.
Okay, the book is available on Amazon. You could also get it for free through the Kindle Unlimited. So if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can get it for free. If you search for Future Visions, it should come up. If you scroll up, and that image there, I painted that image. So you'll easily recognize it from the image. That is an image I created from this entity that appeared in my room, which we didn't get into. Happened last year. But yeah, this entity that looked very similar to that, looked like the Bad Robot logo, came out of the corner of my room and came towards me. Then I passed out, and I woke back up, and it was gone. But that's the book there. So we have links. If you go to my website, which is right there on the screen, go to my website and then hop on over to one of my social media, and I'll have the link there. So because it's kind of a cryptic link.
Omnifuturist.com. Omnifuturist.com is another one.
Yes.
But definitely Art Ramon, ARTRAMON, paintings.com for those listening on KGRADB.com after Clyde Lewis and Ground Zero to the Rundown Live. That is where you're going to get this, omnifuturist.com. We have the link available on our website, therundownlive.com. Thanks again, Art, for joining us. We're going to have to get you back on to get an update in the near future. And we look forward to the rest of these our guests. We have like weeks and weeks of guests lined out. And Mike DeVerde, who's also a futurist, we're going to drill him about the Boeing conspiracy when he comes on, because that's all over the news. Maybe he'll be like, I can't talk about it, I work there. So well, you gotta ask. I'm a reporter, that's what I do. But by the way, your little guys that from your vision, they look a lot like the blockhead from Gumby. Just saying. Oh, yeah. Have you ever seen Gumby?
I don't recall there being a blockhead in Gumby. I know with Gumby, I thought he had a longer, taller head.
Yeah, there's blockheads in Gumby, and I think they were his adversary. And they look like, let's see here if I can pull up a picture of them. They look almost identical to what you painted. And it's amazing because subliminally, like those are, I understand what you saw, and I'm not taking that away from it. And its originality, but it's very cool. I like that image a lot, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see a typical gray or some insectoid. That's what I saw.
Yeah.
So, and when I dream very vividly. I know that I'm in this other world. I don't have dreams of waking up in my bed. That's not something I do. And it's, to me, it was a real event. Yeah, I could say there's a similarity.
Yeah, that's what I saw when I saw those. I was like, it's Gumby. Yeah, that's what I used to watch as a kid. Gumby and the blockheads. But very cool book artwork. Thanks again for joining us, Art. We'll have to have you back soon. Thanks for joining the Rundown Live. For everyone that's out there, omnifuturist.com, therundownlive.com. We have the link right on our website. We appreciate you guys out there, Art. Have a good night. That being said, guys, don't go anywhere. We'll be back tomorrow with more great guests. You're listening to The Rundown Live on KGRADB.com, therundownlive.com, band.video, and anywhere where this broadcast is found, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Speaker. Follow us, subscribe, share the life links. Let your friends know to tune in. Yeah, we're a little wacky. Yeah, we're a little crazy. But would you have it any other way, Don? Would you have it any other way? Would you rather be bored and listen to the NPR voice talk to you all night?
Certainly not. No.
Oh, liar, liar. I like to fall asleep. That's why I listen to NPR. That being said, guys, have a blessed night. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
You're listening to the Destroyers of Fake News, Kristan T. Harris and Don Meyer Jr. on the Rundown Live, your forecast into the future.